So tell your dead mama dig her ass up and post a picture that look better than my motherfucking mama. What's wrong with you?
That response from King Harris crossed a line that hip-hop has very few of left. Because in a culture that has normalized almost every form of public disrespect, the subliminals, the diss tracks, the financial exposure, the relationship revelations, posting a dead woman's gravesite and telling her son to dig her up still lands differently than everything else. Not because the internet hasn't seen worse, but because Sabrina Jackson's story isn't just sad, it's specific. And King Harris found that specificity, photographed it, and uploaded it for 30 million people to scroll past. That decision is what turned a celebrity beef into something the entire culture had to stop and process.
Bonded by disrespecting T.I.'s family, more specifically T.I.'s wife, Tiny. 50 took to Instagram and posted a not so flattering photo of T.I.'s wife, Tiny.
The photo itself was the first tell, not a screenshot, not a meme, not a subliminal caption. An actual photograph of Tiny Harris performing on stage, chosen specifically for its unflattering angle, posted permanently to the main feed rather than stories where it would disappear in 24 hours. The shrug emoji at the end is doing the most damage of anything in the post because it communicated something more cutting than any caption could. That this was effortless. That reducing a woman who helped build one of the most important R&B groups of the 90s to a bad photo op required so little energy that he could do it between meetings. Tiny Harris Xscape founding member, 30-year industry veteran, television personality compressed into a busted angle and a shrug. That was the opening move, and it set everything that followed in motion.
She looks like, in a bad angle, and her body looks a little off. It's like a bad angled photo.
King Harris is 21 years old. That age matters here because it tells you something about the calculation or the absence of one behind what happened next. A 21-year-old who grew up on camera, who has watched his father navigate public beefs his entire life, who has seen what happens when these situations escalate past the point of no return. That person still saw his mother publicly humiliated by a man with 30 million followers and reached for the most nuclear option available. Not a comment, not a subliminal, the actual grave, the actual headstone. Birth year 1958, death year 1983, tagged directly, with instructions to dig her up. In one night, something that started as internet trolling between two rap veterans became one of the most viscerally offensive moments in recent hip-hop public life. And the wild part is that it traces back to a Versus battle that was supposed to be about celebrating music.
He posts a picture of Tiny, and he says, "I keep saying keep my name out your mouth," and puts up like a shrug emoji and says, "Okay."
The Versus conversation T describes is the kind of private agreement that the streets have a very specific vocabulary for. You gave your word, you mapped out a plan, you decided who would go first and how the other would follow. Ty held up his end. He went on Shannon Sharpe's nightcap and put 50 Cent's name in the Versus conversation publicly, exactly like they discussed. And then 50 Cent acted like the conversation never happened. Played it off like T.I. was just another person seeking his attention with no prior communication, no prior agreement, no prior anything. For T.I., the shift from that moment forward wasn't about the Versus anymore. It was about whether a man who makes a private agreement and then denies it publicly when the cameras are on is someone worth sharing a stage with at all. That question answered itself pretty quickly. 50 Cent's position in this situation is consistent with every public conflict he has ever engaged in. Dismiss, troll, shrug, repeat. The Versus format he called irrelevant. The album he hasn't dropped since 2014, he positioned as evolution rather than absence. The keep my name out your mouth posts with the shrug emoji designed to make T.I. look desperate for attention from someone who was too busy building an empire to notice. The King Rat label, one of the most loaded accusations in hip-hop,
I want to say something about my mama. Your mama dead as Your mama dead as
pop is deployed in comment sections with the same energy most people use to leave a thumbs up. And T's response that he had the paperwork, implying documentation of actual cooperation with law enforcement, escalated the terminology war to a place where both men were now making claims that carried real-world weight far beyond Instagram. To understand why King Harris's post hit the way it did, you have to understand who Sabrina Jackson actually was and what happened to her. Because this wasn't a woman who passed away peacefully with family around her and a proper funeral. She was 24 or 25 years old when she was murdered. Her son was 8. She had been raising him alone since she was 15, a teenage single mother in South Jamaica, Queens during the early crack wave, doing what the environment demanded to keep food on the table and a roof overhead. And then someone drugged her drink inside her own apartment, turned on the gas deliberately, and left. The case was ruled a suspected homicide immediately. Nobody was ever arrested. No suspect was ever publicly named. No motive was ever officially released. The case has been cold for over 42 years. Curtis Jackson, the man the world knows as 50 Cent, has carried that for his entire life. He has a tattoo on his forearm that reads Sabrina with Ghetto Angel alongside it. And the headstone that King Harris photographed and uploaded to Instagram is in Rockville Cemetery in Lynbrook, Nassau County, New York. That is a real place. That is a real grave. And what King Harris did with it is what the entire culture reacted to. King Harris growing up in the public eye doesn't explain.
Go dig up. Post a picture of your mom. She dead. Pay respect.
What he did, but it does explain the speed of it. He has spent his entire life watching his parents absorb public pressure and respond to it. He has watched his father get called out, clapped back at, and dissected in interviews and comment sections. He has watched Tiny get photographed, judged, and discussed as an extension of T's public identity rather than as her own person. And when he saw a man with 30 million followers post his mother with a shrug emoji, his mother, the Escape founding member, the woman he has called a legend in public interviews, something bypassed every filter he had. He didn't call a lawyer. He didn't call a PR team. He didn't even call his father. He found the most painful place he could reach, and he reached for it. The problem was never that he responded. The problem was where the response went. And the irony sitting underneath his "I'm not raised like that" statement delivered while simultaneously telling a man to dig up his mother's remains is the kind of contradiction that happens when genuine emotion outpaces every learned instinct about where the line is. Hip-hop has a long documented history of beefs, pulling in people who had nothing to do with the original conflict. Tupac and Biggie's wives, Jay-Z and Nas's baby mother. Carmen Bryan still talks about the damage Super Ugly caused years after Jay-Z's own mother called Hot 97 and made him apologize on air. The pattern is consistent. When emotions are running hot enough and the impulse to escalate overrides everything else, including the understanding that what you're about to do will follow you longer than the anger that created it, the line gets crossed, and the aftermath almost always overshadows the moment that caused it. Jay-Z learned that in 2001, the question of whether King Harris absorbed the same lesson in 2026 was still genuinely open when this situation peaked. Because the internet doesn't forget grave posts the same way it forgets diss tracks. T.I. going into the studio and dropping a diss track preview within hours of his son posting a dead woman's headstone created a specific optics problem that split the culture directly down the middle. On one side, the MC approach, channel the emotion into music, let the bars speak. That's the tradition. That's how Pusha T handled the Drake situation. That's how Kendrick Lamar handled everything. Take the raw anger and make something that lives in the culture permanently rather than disappearing into a comment section. On the other side, the father question. Your son just crossed one of the most recognized lines in hip-hop etiquette. The expected move at that moment was to pull him aside privately, acknowledge what happened, and put some distance between the Harris family name and a gravesite post. Instead, T hit the studio and made the whole situation into a musical event. The beat from DJ Toomp, the duck emoji callback, the hashtag, every element is calculated, which made it look less like a father checking his son and more like a coordinated campaign where the son handled Instagram and the father handled the microphone. The one thing that virtually everyone in this conversation agreed on, regardless of which side they were on, 50 Cent drew first blood by posting Tiny. T had kept the conversation about music for weeks. Versus, Catalog, Hit Records, who had the stronger body of work. He never touched 50's personal life, his family, his past, or any of the territory that has historically been available in any 50 Cent beef. 50 made the decision to introduce Tiny into it. And once that door opened, what came through it was something nobody in that original exchange was fully prepared for. A 21-year-old with a phone, a gravesite address, and no ceiling on how far he was willing to go for his mother. The Versus that was supposed to celebrate 2 catalogs ended up producing one of the most personal and painful exchanges hip-hop has generated in years. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, the music stopped mattering entirely.